Welcome back to the My Inner Struggle podcast. I'm your host, Laura Ferry. Today, we're diving into one of my favorite tools for self-awareness and growth and understanding the people around us, the Enneagram. I'm totally new to this and I'm not doing it alone. I'm joined by someone who doesn't just teach the Enneagram, she lives it, breathes it, and helps people transform through it. Lynn is an Enneagram coach who brings a grounded, compassionate, and incredibly intuitive perspective to this work. She helps people understand who they are beneath the patterns, how to communicate better, and how to grow without losing themselves in the process. Whether you're brand new to the Enneagram, just like me, or you've already gone down the rabbit hole, this conversation is going to give you something real, something you can actually take into your relationships, your business, and your own self-growth. So, when you're ready, grab a cup of coffee and come get uncomfortable with me. Hey, Lynn, welcome. I'm so glad that you're here.
Thank you for having me, Laura. It's great to be here.
Why don't you explain a little bit about what you do?
Yeah. So I am an Enneagram and Kundalini Yoga teacher. And what I do is I help people understand themselves better. And once they understand themselves better, then I give them tools to be the best version of themselves. So the Enneagram is a system of human personality that helps to explain why people behave the way they do. And Kundalini Yoga is a technology that strengthens the nervous system. So if you've got changes in your life that you want to make, it's going to give you the tools to make it easier to make those changes.
Okay, that makes sense. What can you explain to us what an Enneagram is? What is it? For someone that's never heard of that before, what is it?
Yeah, it is a system of human personality that helps to explain why people behave the way they do. So some people call it the GPS of wisdom. I call it the Rosetta Stone of human behavior. But if you have ever wondered, why did that person do that thing they did? The Enneagram gives you a framework to understand it. So it says our experience in life is dictated largely on where our attention goes. So it helps explain how you and I might sit right next to each other. We see the exact same thing happen. I think that was amazing. You think that was horrible. We're both right because our mind is focusing on different parts of what just happened. So that kind of in a nutshell is what it is. It's a very complex system. I started studying it in the 1990s. I've been studying it this whole time. I'm still learning new things. So it's very, very complex and rich. But it can really help you understand why people are doing what they're doing.
So awareness is always, they say that is always the first step in anything. So if you're sitting next to somebody and you have a completely different perception, or interpretation of what's happening, what can you do with that information? So if you are now aware of yourself and where those patterns might be coming from or something like that, what is that? Why would somebody do this?
Yeah, so holidays are coming up. Family dynamics are complex. And I often say, I know that Enneagram has really helped me navigate my family dynamics. So by way of example, I have a brother who's a type 5. And for a while, this is years ago, I was going to visit him once a week to see his new child, his young son. And at one point, a couple of years into this, I needed someone to take care of my dog for an afternoon. And he was like, no, I can't do that. And if I hadn't understood the Enneagram, I would have taken it personally and thought, are you kidding me? I'm putting in all this effort and you can't even take care of my dog for an afternoon. But because I understood that he's a type 5 and he gets really overwhelmed by the unknown and he doesn't have a dog himself, I understood for him, that's actually a really big ask. And it's personal. It's just he can't do that. And so rather than me being frustrated, I just, didn't waste any time getting upset. I just found somebody else. So it can really depersonalize behavior. So I would say that, and maybe just to kind of fill it in, if anyone's trying to heal from, maybe a difficult breakup, I got into the Enneagram because I bought a book. I started reading, I liked the cover. I started reading the types. Eventually I got to my type. But at that same time, I was recovering from a breakup of a boyfriend who had been stealing money from me. So this is back when there were checks, and he would go into my checkbook and write checks for things. forge my name and then steal the bank statements. And the stuff he was stealing money from me for was to buy me a Dalmatian puppy and to take me on vacation. So it was really confusing trying to understand what was happening. The Enneagram explains, how you are at your best and also how you are at your worst. So I started reading all of the unhealthy versions of the personality styles, and I found a match for his behavior. And of course, it didn't excuse it, but it helped me to heal faster because at least I understood where that behavior was coming from. So I think it's reasons like that are why we are interested, why people are interested, and why people use this as a tool.
Yeah, that is interesting. That's very interesting. And kudos to your brother for maintaining boundaries and not just taking it on and being overwhelmed, because that's many of us do. So
Yeah.
you said it was type 5. What is type 5? Or do you want
Yeah,
to go through the types? You don't have to
absolutely.
go into major detail because obviously everybody's going to be listening to this and contacting you to figure out what their type is and doing their own research. And as we said, because we actually, Lynn and I did a call a week ago and figured out what my type was, and that was a really interesting process. And I want to talk about that too, but we can get to that. So what are the types?
Yeah, I'll just start, really quickly. They all have titles, and the titles were meant to, clarify, but sometimes they can be more confusing. So you could be the type, but the title might not fit you. And just to say that,
Right.
type one is called we used to call it the perfectionist. Now we call it the improver, but it's someone whose habit of attention goes to improvement. They're constantly thinking, how can we make things better? And they have a blind spot for leaving things as good enough. So it's really hard for them to leave things as good enough. They have a really harsh inner critic. They're criticizing themselves. Type two is called the helper, the giver. Their habit of attention goes out to the needs of other people, and self-care is really difficult for them. This is someone who really struggles with personal boundaries. Type three is called the achiever. Their habit of attention goes to success in the eyes of other people. They think a lot about what other people are thinking about them. And they have a blind spot for failure. They hate failing. And this is someone who's really competitive. Type four is called the individualist. We used to call it the artist, the romantic, but we stopped because that was confusing people. It's now called the individualist, but their habit of attention goes to what is missing in their lives. They see that very clearly. These are people who have really high emotional fluency. They're really good at the world of emotion. But they have a blind spot for gratitude. It's hard for them to recognize what they actually have. Type five, my older brother. It's called the investigator. Habit of attention goes to concerns that they'll be overwhelmed by the demands of the outside world. And their blind spot is just this idea that there's enough, that they have abundance, that they have enough time, energy, resources. So that's what that person can look like. Type six is called the loyalist or the skeptic. Their habit of attention goes to what could go wrong, what could be dangerous in a situation. They're scanning for threats, and they have a blind spot for what could go right. They don't think about that. That's not as easy for them. Type seven is almost the exact opposite. This is called the yes, their habit of attention goes to what could go
This
right.
is my type. Yes, yes. Go ahead.
Exactly. So these are the people who are really good at being able to see what could go right. They have a blind spot for what could go wrong. That is a lot harder for them. And they have the seven reframe. So if something bad happens, they reframe it into a positive. So they're very resilient.
All day long.
Type eight is called the leader, the boss. The habit of attention goes to power and power dynamics. They like to feel strong and powerful. They have a blind spot for vulnerability, and if vulnerability gets touched, they may go to anger. So this is someone who sometimes has themes of anger and anger management, but if you unpackage where that's coming from, it's usually because they felt vulnerable. And type nine is called the peacemaker, the mediator. This is someone whose habit of attention goes to harmony and moves away from conflict. They're really conflict avoidant. This is said to be the most powerful type in the Enneagram when they step into their power, but they have to learn to engage in healthy conflict because they are famous for giving up things that are important to them to avoid having conflict. And this is someone who doesn't like change typically. So those are just a quick kind of overview of the 9 types.
That makes sense. It's funny because when we went through this and the process of going through that was like really cool. Before we get too deep, where can everybody find you? So if they're curious about this and want to contact you and find out what their personality type is and, move through that. We had a very lengthy conversation, and I think that's how you work it either way, right? You're asking these questions and diving deep into I wouldn't say, actually, I don't want to turn it off. Like when we went through this process, you brought up so many things that I was like, that was the old me. I don't think that way anymore. And so whether you're just kind of beginning this self-discovery process, which this would be really valuable to, like, I wish I had talked to you 3 years ago or 10 years ago just to kind of see where I was. I wonder if that would have accelerated my growth. I don't know. But I'm really glad that we had to have this conversation now. So no matter where you are in your process of discovering yourself, of digging deeper and figuring out like where you are, I think this is a really, really valuable tool to know about yourself. So where would they find you? How would they start?
Yeah, they can go to my website, which is lynnroulo.com, and just, my email address is there, lynn@lynnroulo.com, and message me for a typing interview. And just to talk about that, it's kind of, the question is always like, how do I find out my type? And there's a few different ways. Sometimes you can just read the descriptions and it'll be clear to you. You will know. But for most of us, it's not that obvious. It is more nuanced. And so a lot of people go online and they try to take a test. And, I'm not going to tell you not to do that, but I will say the tests are often inaccurate. And if it's a free test, it's almost definitely going to be inaccurate just because they're not, deep enough. What I offer are typing interviews, and that's what you and I did, where I walk you through a series of questions. And what we're trying to do is figure out, where does your attention go? What are you paying attention to? Most people love that because it's almost like a, interview, therapy session, discovery all in one. And it can really help to shine the light on what are your strengths, what are you just naturally good at, and what are the things that are challenging, and how can you kind of share your strengths and not your weaknesses. So typing interviews is a big part of what I do. And it's exciting to see people find themselves, so.
Yeah. And we had talked about it too when we did it. I feel like you must know people. Like I can read a room. I can go in. My intuition is pretty damn good. And I can read a room. I can read a person and kind of know, just like this would be cool, like in dating, honestly, just to everybody walk around like with their stuff, or like, oh, here's my paperwork, because then you would know what you were getting into. And not that it is as an excuse, like you said, about your ex-boyfriend, about your brother, but that you have a better understanding of like where it's coming from, or the unhealed parts, or the things that they're working through, or a part of their past, the way they were raised, all of those things that make us who we are. It would be so helpful.
It's like getting a user manual for everybody in your life, basically. Like that's what it is. And just to kind of, speak to that, once a year I offer a special, 2-for-1 for the Enneagram typing interviews. And I did it last year, and someone bought it and put it in their secret Santa for their family. And so this woman, her father got it, and he didn't even know what the Enneagram was, but he did a session with me and was like, oh, this is interesting. And then gave the second one to his wife. And she became very interested and started applying it to her 4 daughters. And like soon the whole family knew. And, they've shared with me just how much this family already had like strong family relationships, but how it helped make it even stronger, because suddenly they all understood what was important to the others and what was triggering, and how behaviors, how communication was getting crossed and how they could smooth it out and that type of thing. So yeah, it can be really, really powerful.
This is up there with the 5 love languages for me, because that again is like so telling. And this is even more deep than that, obviously, because it's like of course, the 5, I think we talked about that. You're familiar with that, and giving and receiving, but this is like more, and it's so interesting. Do you think that there are so many things like in relationships, in any of the relationships that we have, that this helps with? Do you think that people have, like, what is a big misunderstanding that they walk away from their type? Like, so when you type somebody, right? I know, like, when we were going through stuff and I was like, well, that was kind of like the old me, but your process is really good because you start big and then you take away the things that we know aren't you, right? And then what did you say? We have like a maybe column kind of, right? And then you dig, and then you go down another layer, and let's see what comes out of that. So what is like the biggest thing that people misunderstand about these?
Yeah. I mean, the biggest thing they misunderstand is this idea that you're one of 9 types, that it's like that simple and that you have that and then that's the end of the story. Like as we talked about in your session, you have one dominant habit of attention, but you have a connection to 4 other types and you adopt
Right.
behavior of other types. And, it's a super complex system. So I think the thing that people misunderstand the most is that in their mind it's like, okay, it's one of 9 and I figure out that and that's the end of the story. And like I said, I've been studying it for over 25 years and I'm still learning new things. So I think that's the first big misunderstanding. And then probably and it's not a misunderstanding, but the second biggest question people have for me is like, who should I be with? Kind of back to your dating question.
That's interesting. I didn't really think about that.
People ask that all the time, or they're in a relationship and should we be together? Which, the answer there is any type combination can be successful or any type combination cannot. It's actually more an issue of self-awareness. And the second book I wrote was about Enneagram and intimate relationships. And it ended up being a 500-page book, which was not my intention at the beginning.
Wow. Okay.
To talk about around this topic. And what I ended up doing was interviewing like people in every single type combination. So I had like over 100 testimonials and some very beautiful stories and some very heartbreaking stories. But what everyone kind of agreed was that, they could use their relationships as ways to understand themselves better. And that was the people who were kind of feeling good about, whether we're still together or not, they felt like they had learned something from it. So I would say that as well. But any type combination can be successful.
So in that, I actually want to kind of go down that path a little bit. So do you encounter people sometimes, I think it depends on like their level of almost like confidence in their own self-growth. Like, do people generally, maybe not generally or occasionally or in your experience, figure out what their type is and just go like, okay, well, that's who I am. Are they afraid of like changing that? Like when we went through mine, we talked about many of those characteristics of those types that were very stuck where I was, 10 years ago in that way and 5 years ago in that way. And I am so different now. There's people argue like people don't like really change, they don't really fundamentally change. I am who I am, but I'm tapping into those better parts of myself and setting healthier boundaries and creating healthier habits and all of that all around in life and how you handle those relationships and things. Do you ever encounter people that, figure out what it is and it's maybe not the necessarily healthiest type, if that's an accurate thing to use, and they're just like, well, I am just this way? Does that ever happen?
So it's a great question. I think what you're asking is, do people ever get to it, learn their type, and then they're like, okay, that's the end. Now I know. Sure, that does happen.
So if somebody's like violating their boundaries all the time, trying to be the helper and the peacemaker and all of that, and they're just like, well, this is who I am. This is just how I am, rather than working on your boundaries and creating a better relationship with yourself.
Yeah, I'll probably answer that 2 ways. So I teach this individually and I teach this in businesses, actually. So the people who come to me individually, they're curious, like something drove them to come to me. And so, and it might be that they're having a conflict with someone in their life and they're trying to figure that out. But usually they are at least curious to explore, the next step. And again, I lean heavily into the strengths. And so like, I'm more like, how can we share your strengths? Like, that piece. So I think there's that. When I teach it in a business environment, there are people there who are completely not interested in personal growth. That is, they're there to do something else. And, they got told by the boss they have to do this. So I would say for those people, sure. But where it still is really beneficial is they might not focus so much on themselves and how they can evolve, but they are using it to understand their colleagues better. So what nobody wants is, useless conflict. Like that just doesn't accomplish anything. And so
Right.
I've seen people who really weren't interested in personal growth who still loved the Enneagram because it helped them understand the people that they were forced to be with, and so I think it's helpful that way. I say it's like the Enneagram is like a Swiss Army knife. You can use it to, butter bread, or you can use it for surgery. Like it is up to you. It is a very multifaceted tool. So it's up to you, like how you want to approach it. I'll also just add, I teach this because of what happened for me. And the part where I add Kundalini Yoga to the mix, because I'm also a Kundalini Yoga teacher, is I knew the Enneagram from when I was in my 20s, and I knew my type. I'm a 7. I knew what I needed to do to change. But the truth was, even with all my honest effort, I was making really slow progress. Like I was just too anxious and I didn't know how to deal with
Right.
anxiety. Through a different set of life circumstances, a breakup actually, I started doing Kundalini Yoga, which is a practice that really builds your nervous system. And what I found was after about 6 months of a regular practice, maybe not even 6 months, maybe 3 months, suddenly, like a lot of the changes that I'd been trying to make for years just started happening. And so a lot of my work is actually putting together the two systems. So understand your psychology, but then let me give you a tool so that when you try to make those changes that you know you should make, it's easier. It's more kind of in range. And so that's the combination that I often work with people on.
It's interesting. And I know we wanted to kind of talk about like you completely changed your life too. And so these tools, these are some of the tools that you used to do that and completely, because I talk about it all the time with my inner struggle and how much I have changed as a person fundamentally at my core and all the relationships around me. But you did the same thing, and this was a tool that you used to its full advantage. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so I'm a certified public accountant, so I'm a finance person by training. And if you were to look at my life 14 years ago, I was working in San Francisco, California, in a finance role and living my life. And in 2012, for no reason, decided to move to Athens, Greece. And I'm not an impulsive person, I'm not that one at all, but I literally had no connection to Greece. I just had a very strong sense that I should be in Athens. So I came in 2011 for two kind of visits and then decided to move. So I moved to a country where I didn't speak the language, I knew nobody, I like started all over. I kept doing my finance work for 3 years, working remotely, and then at the end of 3 years, it just became clear again, it was time to stop doing that. So I turned all of my attention to the Enneagram and Kundalini Yoga. Wrote my first book, then wrote my second book, and kind of redesigned my life. And I'm now applying for a Greek citizenship. So I'm like,
That's pretty cool.
like example of you can make these big changes and you don't need to have an official reason. Like it really truly was an
Right.
intuitive move. And that can be the right thing because for me it was. And I tell people I feel like my real life started when I got to Greece. And it's such a funny thing to say because there was nothing wrong with my San Francisco life. From the outside, it looked great. And I wasn't even unhappy. It just felt like, is this all? Like I didn't feel invigorated. And here, like, I don't
Right.
think about retirement. Like, there's nothing to retire from. Like, this is my life. I'm doing what I want to spend my time.
Right.
I'm
Yes.
surrounded by people I love. I'm in an environment that is, challenging in a good way. Like I like being here. So yeah, I think you can just, I guess my message would just be, you can change your life. You can make it completely different. And where you are today, you might look back, a few years from now and be like, wow, like that was quite a shift that I made and that can work. But you do need
Yeah.
tools. I don't think you just do that. I mean, I think you need things along the way to help you with that navigation of those big changes.
Yeah, absolutely. That's beautiful. I think that's so cool. I don't know, I have like wanderlust in the last, probably 5, 6 years of my life, and I've been doing everything that I can within my current circumstances to practice that. And it's been really, really incredible. So I can only imagine how it would feel to just like up and move somewhere. And I don't know, maybe I'll find out one day. I'm not really sure. My kids keep me pretty grounded here, as far as that goes, but I have my whole life ahead of me, and I think that some people just get stuck in the this is how it is, or this is how it's always been, and this is how it's going to be. And it's not until they open their eyes to the possibility that can just be right outside your door, even if it's um, a small change. It doesn't have to be moving to another country. I think anything that you can do to further your journey along, just being open and open to receiving whatever comes your way. I think that's a big thing. So I think it's really neat because you actually email after the session, your type and some information about it. So I want to just like touch on a couple things. Actually, maybe you can just explain a couple things. So my type 7, I'm the enthusiast. When we came to that conclusion, I was like, well, that makes sense. And again, you led me to that conclusion. It wasn't like, you're calculating everything and you're like, you are this. You were letting me guide it, and being aware of like the questions that you ask just make so much sense because they're sort of like some like analogies or, different situations, like how you behave in different crowds of people or with work or clients or, things like that. So can you give me just a couple reminders of what the enthusiast personality type is like, or what I think in the email, because I just pulled it up just to see, was 4 things type sevens need to be happy. Why don't you just give me like a couple of them?
Yeah, I will do that in a second. Just to touch on,
Yeah.
what you said, a very key element of the Enneagram is this idea that you self-type. So like when I have a session with someone, I don't tell them what type they are because I don't know
Right.
what's going on in your head. Like you're the only one who knows. And what we're trying to uncover is motivation. So what ends up being important is that you recognize yourself. So I would say like you recognized yourself as a type 7, and then suddenly it all fits because you're like, oh, of course I've been like this and that, so
Yeah.
but so I'll just talk high level about type 7. Type 7
Yeah.
is enthusiast. These are the rose-colored lenses of the Enneagram. Their habit of attention goes to the positive. It is really easy for you to see what could go right in a situation. You're good at strategy, you're good at brainstorming, you're good at future casting. Sevens have a blind spot for what could go wrong, so it is harder for them to process negative emotion. They tend to either reframe it as a positive or just fill their schedule with a lot of things to kind of keep them distracted. So distractibility, sevens do. Think they need to be happy is a lot of personal freedom, a lot of variety, a lot of flexibility, a lot of people around them who support their new ideas and their that. But what sevens actually need is to come deeply into the present moment. So I too am a 7, and what I have to watch is my mind is constantly focusing on this better future. Like things are good now, but tomorrow's going to be better, and next year is really going to. And it's like we get so caught in the future that we miss the current moment. And where
Yeah.
we do really well is when we deeply ground and we become really present and we look around and we think, wow, because sevens own gratitude. It comes so naturally to us. Like we literally can see everything that life is offering in a positive light. And what's nice is when sevens can do that, they can share that with other people because we talk a lot. We're a talkative type and we have a lot of energy. And because gratitude comes so easily to us, that's something that we can share with others. So that's kind of what I mean about like when you start to learn your type, you learn how to share your strengths. You already know these things kind of intuitively, but it's nice to see it codified a little bit, to see a system that points to it and says, here's what you're naturally good at. And, here are the things that can make you even better.
Yeah.
Did that answer your question?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. I just wanted to be able to share that with everybody so they can see the potential of like what they may learn about themselves too. Um, it's a really interesting look in the mirror, I would say. It's not like one of those harsh ones, right?
Mm-mm.
Like when you're looking, looking at your own behaviors and your own patterns and things like that. This was really, really cool and a great experience. And I really, really thank you for that. I'm so glad that we got to connect, and who knows what'll happen, in the future. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for having this conversation with me. Can you remind everybody where they can find you on social media, your website, and all?
So my website is lynnroulo.com, lynnroulo.com. Lynn Roulo is also my Instagram. I have a YouTube channel that has a little bit of Enneagram, more on the yoga side, and that's Lynn Roulo 11. I'm offering a free giveaway, 9, it's an ebook about the Enneagram.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yes.
Awesome. Great. Beautiful. Thank you so much, Lynn. It was so great to connect.
Thank you. I really appreciate your time and welcome to the world of Type 7.
Thank you.
I want to thank Lynn. Thank you so much for being here, for sharing your wisdom in such a grounded and practical way. I know so many listeners are going to walk away with a deeper understanding of themselves and honestly, a lot more compassion for the people they love. If today's conversation opened up something for you, take a moment to reflect on what resonated. And if you want to dive deeper into your Enneagram type or work with Lynn directly, all of her info is linked in the show notes. As always, thank you for listening to the My Inner Struggle podcast. If this episode supported you, inspired you, or made you think about yourself in a new way, please share it with someone who needs it. And don't forget to follow. It helps more people find this work. As always, I'm thinking of you and sending you love, and I will see you soon.